Meet the new standard in sleep. This is Clockwork Ultra. It's not a bed, it's a revolution in the sleep game. Crafted for those who demand nothing but peak performance from every aspect of life, including sleep. It cools, it heats.
Uncontrollable fury on full display. This brazen act enraged Saddam, who viewed the murder not only as a personal betrayal, but also as a reckless disregard for the regime's stability. As punishment, Uday was briefly imprisoned and then exiled to Switzerland, where he reportedly continued to display erratic and violent behavior, including run-ins with local authorities. His time abroad was marked by isolation and resentment. His exile was short-lived. By leveraging his mother's influence and Saddam's eventual forgiveness, Uday returned to Iraq, resuming his role in the regime and continuing his reign of terror. In 1995, Uday established the Fedayeen Saddam, a paramilitary group notorious for its ruthless methods and unwavering loyalty to Saddam Hussein's regime. This shadowy militia, composed primarily of fanatical supporters, was tasked with suppressing dissent, instilling fear, and maintaining absolute control over the population. Their signature Darth Vader-inspired black uniforms added an aura of intimidation, symbolizing their brutal and uncompromising nature. Under Uday's leadership, the Fedayeen Saddam quickly earned a reputation for carrying out barbaric acts designed to terrorize the populace. Public executions became a grim spectacle, often conducted in front of large crowds to serve as warnings to potential dissidents. One of the group's most infamous practices was the use of power drills to bore holes in prisoners' skulls. Reports also emerged of captives being tortured with electric shocks, burned with acid, and subjected to other forms of inhumane treatment. The Fedayeen's activities extended beyond Iraq's borders as well. Uday allegedly ordered the group to assassinate exiled dissidents and intimidate critics abroad, solidifying their status as an instrument of terror. Their operations became synonymous with Uday's unchecked power, further cementing his image as one of Iraq's most feared and sadistic figures. In contrast to Uday, Qusay Saddam Hussein, born in 1967, was reserved and calculated, preferring to operate from the shadows. His quieter nature earned him a reputation as the more level-headed and disciplined of the two brothers, traits that endeared him to their father. Saddam recognized Qusay's potential as a trusted confidant and groomed him for significant roles within the regime from an early age. Unlike Uday, whose public displays of violence often attracted attention, Qusay's focus on organization, loyalty, and discretion made him an indispensable figure in Saddam's inner circle. Those close to the family described him as methodical and pragmatic, qualities that would later define his leadership style within the regime's oppressive machinery. In 1988, Qusay was appointed deputy director of Al-Amn al-Qas, Iraq's special security organization. This agency was critical to maintaining Saddam's control over Iraq, functioning as the regime's enforcer in eliminating opposition. The organization operated in secrecy, coordinating abductions, assassinations, and covert surveillance to identify and neutralize perceived threats. Under Qusay's direction, Al-Amn al-Qas became one of the most feared entities in Saddam's regime. One of Qusay's most infamous roles was his brutal suppression of the 1991 uprisings that erupted across Iraq in the aftermath of the Gulf War. These uprisings, fueled by widespread discontent and calls for political reform, were met with a devastating response. Qusay orchestrated the destruction of the southern marshlands, a vital ecological and cultural area that had sustained Shia Arab communities for centuries. By draining these marshes, Qusay not only displaced tens of thousands of people, but also decimated their way of life, turning a flourishing habitat into a desolate wasteland. This act of ecological and cultural destruction was part of a broader strategy to crush dissent and ensure the regime's dominance. By 1996, Qusay had become chairman of the Iraqi National Security Council. This position granted him oversight of Iraq's intelligence agencies, including the feared Mukhabarat, which specialized in espionage, surveillance, and eliminating political opposition. His new authority allowed him to direct these agencies with ruthless efficiency.
You want the news, unbiased, straight facts, and we want to give it to you. At Straight Arrow News, we give you reliable information in a time where media mistrust is at a high. We report on stories that matter to you without a political lean or agenda. Americans have reported SAN
employing a network of informants to root out dissent and ensure loyalty to Saddam's regime. Furthermore, Qusay gained control over Iraq's financial dealings, including revenues from illicit oil trade and state enterprises. This not only enabled him to amass significant personal wealth, but also provided the resources needed to consolidate his political power and expand his influence within the regime. Qusay's quieter, methodical strategies endeared him to his father, which in turn solidified his position as Saddam's preferred successor, further exasperating the rivalry between the two brothers. By the late 1990s, Qusay's influence extended into every aspect of Iraq's security and intelligence apparatus, making him one of the most powerful figures in the country. In preparation for the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the United States and its coalition allies developed a strategy aimed at dismantling Saddam's regime. A crucial element of this strategy was identifying, locating, and either capturing or neutralizing key figures within Saddam's inner circle. To systematize the process of apprehending these individuals, coalition forces devised a unique tool, a deck of cards. Each card in the deck represented one of the 55 most wanted figures in Saddam's government. This innovative approach served multiple purposes. It functioned as a practical resource for soldiers on the ground, enabling them to quickly recognize high-value targets. It also served as a psychological tactic, reducing these feared figures to a deck of playing cards. Uday and Qusay Hussein were placed near the top of the list. Uday was designated the Ace of Hearts, while Qusay was the Ace of Clubs. These designations were not arbitrary. While Uday's violent escapades were well known enough in public.
Ah, sí, preguntando a ver si sale.
Bueno, pero yo no pretendo estar 6 meses aquí abajo.
No.
Te pido por si te sale una de que venga, no sé, un mes o dos, claro.
Sí, no estoy viendo Sí, estoy viendo nada más. De lo que hablamos el otro día, como que me quedó, digo, bueno, voy a ver qué hay. ¿Qué ofrecen? A ver si...
Ha llegado el interceptor y está listo para acabar con esto.
Besides, Qusay's actions were equally, if not more, insidious. His ability to maintain a low profile while exercising immense control made him a particularly dangerous figure. This made his capture or elimination a top priority for coalition forces, as his continued existence posed a direct threat to the coalition's efforts to establish a post-Saddam Iraq. The decision to offer a $15 million reward for information leading to their capture reflected their significance and the difficulty of apprehending them. The substantial bounty was intended to incentivize Iraqis to come forward with information, leveraging the discontent of those who had suffered under the brothers' reign of terror. For the coalition, capturing or eliminating Uday and Qusay was seen as essential to dismantling the remnants of Saddam's regime. As coalition forces swiftly advanced through Iraq in 2003, the collapse of Saddam's regime became inevitable. The regime's leaders were suddenly thrust into survival mode. Once figures of immense power and fear, they were now fugitives, desperately attempting to avoid capture or death at the hands of coalition forces. While Saddam moved independently to evade detection, Uday and Qusay sought safety together. Their first plan of action was to flee to neighboring Syria. The choice of Syria was likely a calculated one. The two countries shared a historically complicated relationship, but both were governed by Ba'athist regimes, making it a potential safe haven. Additionally, Syria had provided support to Saddam's Iraq during various periods, and was seen as a place where Uday and Qusay might leverage political connections or sympathetic contacts to secure asylum. However, the brothers' plan quickly unraveled. As they approached the Syrian border, their requests for entry were denied, under intense international scrutiny following the US-led invasion. Syria was unwilling to risk the fallout of harboring two of the world's most wanted men. Damascus likely understood the consequences of granting asylum to Uday and Qusay, as it would have jeopardized its already precarious position on the global stage. The refusal to admit the brothers marked a pivotal moment, leaving them stranded without a clear escape route. With no refuge in Syria, Uday and Qusay turned to Mosul, a city in northern Iraq that held strategic and symbolic significance. Known for its diverse population of Arabs, Kurds, and other ethnic groups, Mosul was a complex and volatile city, making it an attractive hiding place for those seeking to exploit its social dynamics to evade detection. Additionally, Mosul was a region where Saddam's regime had loyal supporters, some of whom were willing to risk their lives to protect his family. The brothers found shelter with Nawaf al-Zaidan, a distant relative of Saddam Hussein and a longtime supporter of the regime. Al-Zaidan's mansion, a heavily fortified and well-guarded structure, became their refuge. The mansion's fortified nature reflected the paranoia and preparedness of Saddam's inner circle, who had anticipated scenarios in which they might need to defend themselves against both internal and external threats. On July 22, 2003, U.S. forces received a tip-off about the brothers' whereabouts. They launched a meticulously planned and high-stakes operation to capture or eliminate the brothers. The critical lead that led to the siege came from an informant.
Do you want to know where to invest $1,000 right now? Well, forget about AI, quantum computing, electric vehicles, cryptocurrencies, or robotics. A little note.
Reportedly motivated by the $15 million reward offered for the information leading to the brothers' capture. The informant, later identified as Nawaf al-Zaidan himself, the very man who had offered Uday and Qusay shelter, betrayed them. Al-Zaidan's motives remain a subject of speculation, with theories ranging from fear of retribution by coalition forces to the allure of financial reward amidst the chaos of post-invasion Iraq. The intelligence provided was precise, detailing the layout of the mansion and the presence of Uday, Qusay, and Qusay's teenage son Mustafa. Armed with this information, the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, supported by Special Operations Forces, quickly mobilized for the high-profile mission. The operation began with the encirclement of the Al-Zaidan mansion, located in Mosul's Al-Falah neighborhood. The property, heavily fortified with reinforced walls and guarded by loyalists, posed a formidable challenge. U.S. forces sealed off all potential escape routes, ensuring that occupants were effectively trapped. Loudspeakers were used to issue demands for surrender, offering the brothers a chance to give themselves up peacefully. However, true to their reputation for defiance and violence, Uday and Qusay refused to comply. Instead, they barricaded themselves on the mansion's upper floors, prepared to fight to the death. Alongside them was 14-year-old Mustafa, who had also chosen to stand and fight. The first exchange of gunfire was intense and chaotic. U.S. forces came under heavy fire from the mansion's windows as the brothers used their fortified position to full advantage. Armed with machine guns, grenades, and other small arms. They launched a fierce counterattack that temporarily slowed the coalition's advance. Despite their inferior numbers, Houdet and Cousset demonstrated remarkable resolve, using the layout of the mansion to frustrate their attackers. Their familiarity with guerrilla tactics and the defensive features of the property made the initial assault costly for U.S. forces. 4 American soldiers were wounded in the early stages of the battle. As the stalemate continued, U.S. forces escalated their assault, deploying increasingly heavy firepower to neutralize the defenders. Anti-tank rockets were fired to breach the mansion's reinforced walls, and TOW missiles, mounted on Humvees, targeted specific areas of the building where the defenders were entrenched. The coalition also called in aerial support, with attack helicopters circling above to provide real-time intelligence and suppressive fire if necessary. The siege became a battle of attrition, with U.S. forces determined to avoid unnecessary casualties, while systematically dismantling the mansion's defenses. A particularly tragic aspect of the siege was the involvement of Cousset's son, Mustafa. At just 14 years old, he displayed the same ferocity and determination as his father and uncle. Witness accounts and reports from the battlefield suggest that Mustafa actively participated in the defense, opening fire on U.S. soldiers, and refusing to surrender until the very end. Mustafa's presence highlighted the intergenerational violence and indoctrination that defined Saddam Hussein's regime. Born into a family of privilege and power, Mustafa had been raised in an environment where loyalty to the regime and readiness for violence were instilled from an early age. His death, alongside his father and his uncle, added a poignant layer of tragedy to the events in Mosul. After hours of intense fighting, U.S. forces made the decision to deploy 10 TOW missiles in a decisive effort to end the standoff. These precision-guided missiles caused catastrophic damage to the mansion, collapsing sections of the structure and setting it ablaze. With the mansion heavily compromised, U.S. troops launched their final assault, storming the upper floors where Houdet, Cousset, and Mustafa had taken their last stand. The resistance by this point had significantly weakened, as the defenders were likely disoriented and injured in the sustained barrage of missiles and gunfire. When the firefight ended and the smoke cleared, U.S. forces discovered the lifeless bodies of Houdet, Cousset, and Mustafa on the mansion's upper floor. Houdet and Cousset had sustained over 20 bullet wounds each. Mustafa, despite his youth, was also killed in the confrontation, reportedly after continuing to resist until the very end. To confirm the brothers' identities, the U.S. military conducted thorough autopsies. Photographs of their bodies were taken and distributed to the media, a controversial decision aimed at proving to the Iraqi people and the world that Houdet and Cousset were indeed dead. This was seen as a critical step in dismantling the psychological grip of Saddam's regime, as the brothers' survival could have been used to perpetuate fear and unrest. The photographs, gruesome, were deemed necessary to bring closure to countless victims of Houdet and Cousset's brutality. Their faces, disfigured by the battle, had to be reconstructed using Mortician's blood before being made public. Despite the controversy surrounding the release of these images, they served as powerful evidence that the regime's reign of terror was coming to an end.
Have you ever wondered what life would be like when you could create more success without actually working harder? What happens when you imagine having the success you deserve and the freedom to do the things that you love? I'm going to let you in on a powerful secret that the most successful people in the world have been for thousands of years. My clients know me as a dominant hypnotist. I've been recognized on platforms like Joe Rogan and ESPN.
I got like hypnotized too. Before, yeah. Dude. Who did it to you? My friend Dominique.
I've worked with many different NFL athletes, UFC fighters, Olympic athletes, actors, celebrities, and thousands of entrepreneurs and salespeople from all over the world. Hypnosis has been proven
No me preguntó nada de precio, me dijo,
most effective
me dice, yo,
to experience
como te
a
quede cómo
powerful
pagarle,
transformation.
si quiere pagarme todo el último día.
Success and abundance in your life.
What else Custom Model used to do with me, he used to take me to a hypnotist. He was a hypnotist as well. I never felt like that before, like taking a
big drug revolution.
Porque ella supuestamente era
Focus,
ayer,
man.
hoy,
They're telling you you're great.
If you're ready
otro
for
día
a
más.
paradigm shift, it will allow you to break through mental
Que
blocks,
mañana, claro, ni sube,
reduce
mañana es martes,
stress,
¿no?
and
Mañana es
unlock the
martes.
success you've been
Claro,
striving
ellos es que el
for
miércoles recién.
without
Parece que mañana no sé qué van a
This
hacer.
week, I'm doing a free live hypnosis session. Now, my clients pay me $5,000 for just one session. The good news is you get to experience this for free. Now, this session is the same exact session I personally used on some of the top NFL athletes, UFC fighters, Olympic athletes, and tens of thousands of business leaders from all over the world. So if you're ready to program your subconscious mind to naturally attract success in your life, tap into supreme confidence, and gain massive clarity without working more hours, without working harder, click the link below and register for the free live hypnosis session.
Bueno, ahí te dirá, bro. Oh.
¿Y cómo cansa esta nieve, boludo?
El sol, bro.
El sol, sí, yo que terminé agotado, además.
Hoy está picante, Bale,
Parece que sí.
Dale. ¿El agua?
Vamos. Vamos. ¿Jimmy, mañana trabajas? Vale, bueno.
Ay, ¿cómo se olvida?
De comida.
¿Qué es esta comida?
Comida, mira un postre. Granola, yogur y no sé qué.
No sé, otra vez.
¿Ves? La avena, las semillas. Le das poner al horno a tostar y luego con yogur, unas pepitas de chocolate y ala. Y banana.
¡Au! Vamos.
Eran 10. Espera.
¡Clara! ¡Hola!
Espera.
Esa niña quiere atención.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Son 3 chicos. Claro, fueron 16 cupones. En total, pues eran 16. 6 y 6 más, ¿cuántos serían? 22. 2, 16, a ver. 5 y 5 y 5, 15. Serían 6 más 2 días para cada chico. Vamos, la ducha. Vamos.
Voy a prendérselo.
Sí, voy a prender el horno también. Así que nos duchamos y prender el horno para comer algo. Vamos. Nos duchamos rápido juntos. Va.
Pero yo me peino y yo me baño.
Dale, vamos.
Yo me pongo todo el champú, el y todo, ¿ok?
Tengan cuidado que Raúl está ahí, al acecho de todos ustedes. Al acecho ahí en Gómez del Lion, cagando a todos. Mira, se quedó ahí una horita hoy, hizo 10 pases hoy. Ahí, una horita. Más luego un supervisor por ahí corriendo a todo el mundo también.
rojo.
Sí, pero creo que no bloquean pases, como que están jodiendo ya a la gente por echarse una risa de la peña.
Me dijo que lo mostré por ahí.
Sí. Y va de Telemar. Sí, va con cascolón y Telemar.
Ah, ¿el de rojo?
Sí, un supervisor.
Pa,
Vamos.
te quiero decir algo.
Sí,
¿Qué? Sí.
Si vas con adultos.
No, a mí no me pasa nada.
No, a mí tampoco, vamos 7, 8. 3 niños, 4 adultos, los abuelos ya y no me cajan la vida.
Botas camufladas.
Sí, no saben. Mucha gente, demasiada gente para ser trucho.
believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Uy.
Las piernas, brother. Vamos a ir para allá.
Bueno, después hay que deducir cuánto era que 1500, ¿no?
1666.
Y después,
sí. Y luego, no sé cuándo será mi hermano. Y ahí se hace pues 1666 entre los días que se quedan, entre 30, los días que se quedan y eso lo repartimos entre tú y yo. Que van a ser más o menos 120 cada uno. Así. Mi güey trató de quedar $90 los cupones y 17 del bocado de...
¿No quieres que hagamos 100 los cupones?
Bueno.
Así sale redondo.
Redondo sale siempre. Pero una bolsita así redonda hecha. Sí, ya te doy. Pero espérate que me pagan.
¿Ahora te pagaron los cupones?
No, no me pagaron nada, se me va a pagar todo el último día.
Ah, bueno. No, o sea, a ver. Estoy pensando en lo que es lo más justo, ¿no? Porque cuando yo te los compré, vos ahí ya le sacaste 5. Y... lo hiciste como doble business, ¿no? O sea, yo al final, viste, como que digo, bueno.
No, doble business, ¿no?
O sea, percibiste ganancia en las dos instancias. O sea, yo pienso que es lo más justo, ¿no? Capaz que no es lo mismo que vos pensás, pero
No,
está todo bien igual, ¿no?
Hice lo mismo que tú.
Yo para que quede claro. ¿Cómo?
¿Tú cuánto compraste los cupones hoy?
Yo compré 30 cada uno. ¿No? Ahí, bueno, ahí yo digo, listo, yo te pagué más de lo que te hago de salió, listo. Hago, digo, para que te quede contento Jimmy, yo le pago más de 30, porque tengo la posibilidad de comprar los 25. ¿Verdad? Vamos a comprar los 30 para hacer la onda.
Claro.
Vos, de repente, yo por ejemplo, si yo no tengo los cupones, yo te los pido. O sea, esto es lo que yo hago, ¿no? Esto es lo que haría. Yo no tengo los cupones, yo te digo, mirá, dame los 6 cupones y yo después te los vendo a $50. Te vendo a $50, te traigo, no sé, 40 y yo me quedo 10.
Pues claro, pero lo que dices del doble business es lo mismo que has hecho tú.
No, ¿cómo?
Joder, tú le vendiste los míos al cliente, ¿no? O para que los tienes ahí...
Claro, por eso, es para igualar. Es para igualar, ¿no? O sea, por eso le digo lo que más justo.
Sí, lo que tú veas.
Sí, bueno, o sea, todo bien, man. Sí.
Te doy 25,
No, no, tranqui, paguen, boludo, volvemos a hablar si
Sí,
quieres.
no, cuando te pagan te lo doy. Le he vendido un montón más, por eso te digo.
Claro. ¿Conseguiste 25 más?
Conseguí 10 cupones más, 25. Y luego sigo necesitar otros 3 cupones. ¿Te queda algún cupón?
No, a mí nada.
Ahí me quedan 2, los tengo ahí por si acaso. Pero como seguramente quieran, que yo tengo, hoy usaron 5 de los 10 que tengo.
Claro.
Mañana otros 5. Ya me quedo sin esos. Solo me quedo con los 2 que tengo yo y míos ahí de reserva. Pero yo creo que pasamos 100 también, así que van a ser, voy a necesitar, voy a acabar necesitando otros 3 más. Pero yo creo que se los puedo comprar al mismo que me ha vendido estos 10. Pero si tenías tú, te los compraba a ti para que te quedaras sin ellos. ¿Sabes?
Sí, yo no. Ah, bueno, bien, boludo, esa familia al final, boludo.
Y al final
Son unos vuelteros de mierda, pero...
son $100 más al día.
Claro.
O sea, si te barata la clase, 6,50, que vienen, lleva viniendo 4 años. Pero además esos 100, pues a 7,50 me sale. De cada día, clase. Que al final me va a quedar nada, $1.000 todos los días que hago con estos. Porque el otro va para alquiler, ¿sabes?
Sí, yo no llego. Así que mañana voy al banco el mañana. Y te lo dejo ahí en el cajón.
Sí, pero si mañana no lo voy a pagar, ¿qué pasa? Aquí hay alguien. Entra, Google, sé que está acá.
Cabecilla la hija de mi puta.
Yo no me llevo esta que está con todas las cuadras. Joder, todos completas acá. Es una mierda. Bueno, no se estáis dando de tiros. Se te quiere ir a full.
We have all seen and are seeing children, young adults, and of course adults around us who obsess over the question of how they are going to change the world, how they are going to make a name for themselves, what their purpose is going to be, how and by when they can make something of themselves and become a somebody. And they obsess over it, and they maybe set themselves certain dates, certain ages by which they think they should achieve such and such things. And they grow up to be adults, and those ages and dates and whatever come and pass, and they start fearing, which they've been doing all along also, that they'll never amount to anything. And they wonder, have I wasted my life? They fear, am I wasting my life now? And we've all done this. And I want this video to be the beginning of us completely destroying that fear. Just getting rid of it. Because it's entirely counter to not only our happiness, but to reason. And I hope to show you how. The first step, in my opinion, realizing how futile this is and how nonsensical it is in reality, is to notice the difference between our inward works and our outward works. In other words, how effortlessly and how easily, how simply everything happens within us, and how difficult and how toilsome and how sometimes impossible it is in our outward works, on the things, all the things that we try to achieve in the outside world. The entire crucial point is in this difference. And I want to illustrate that with a simple little thing. Imagine you want to tell your friend how you feel about them. You just want to write them a nice little few words. And you decide to do it with a little note card or postcard or a little letter because you want to make it special. Just a little bit of effort. If you have the supplies, you can start writing. If you don't, you first have to go out and get the right paper, the envelopes and all that. And then you can start writing it. And if you can find the right words, you can start putting it down on paper. And you might make a mistake. You might make a spelling mistake. And because you wanted to make it special and somewhat beautiful, of course, you can't just strike through it or anything like that. You want to start over. You do that however many times. Then when you finally have it all down, and it's great, you put it in the envelope, you seal it. If you have a stamp for it, you can put it on. If you realize you're out of stamps, you need to go get stamps. And after that, you need to walk or drive to the closest mailbox or post office. And it still doesn't end there. It literally is out of your hands at that point. But there's still so much that needs to work out. The weather needs to cooperate. The people who work there need to be competent. They must not make a mistake. Your letter must not get stuck in some machine. There's luck and chance and the other people involved, and literally weather involved, and just randomness. And if all of that goes well, your friend might receive your letter, and they might be there to open it and to read it and to understand it. This is an example to an external work. The same exact work inwardly of thinking these things that you're writing, of feeling this way towards your friend, of thinking of them in your mind, is instant and effortless and completely under your control. Everything inside of us, in our minds, in our souls, in our spirits, whatever you want to call it, in our intellect, is complete and instant and effortless. And the same thing, you can see how much work it takes if it is to be an outward work and an activity of us in the outside world versus in the inside world. And I say this to say this. Even the simplest of things of thinking a few words and then needing to accomplish them, so to speak, in the real world, to have it reach our friend physically. You can see how much more work that is than us just already feeling that way and thinking like that within us. And it's the same with this whole idea of what's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? What's my place in it? How will I find myself? We try to solve these problems, so to speak. We try to make them come real. We work on them in the outside world and not in the inside world. And that's why we're doomed to fail. In other words, we're doomed to this fear of never being able to accomplish them. Because yes, we're probably not. These are dreams and ambitions that we come up as children, young adults, or even adults, with the very limited insight into reality, into the world that we have. And we just go into our imagination and think the outside world will cooperate and will do this and that's for us, and everything will go well so that I might achieve my dreams, only so that I can feel like I've made something of myself, whatever that means. Whereas to make something of oneself, to find oneself within, can be achieved perfectly and effortlessly. But we go on trying to achieve it, trying to know ourselves, find ourselves and our meaning in life outside of us. And so we're doomed to be constantly pushed and pulled by outside forces, by outside materials and means and luck and other people and chance and weather and climate. All these things that we have no control over, we start holding ourselves responsible for, because we have a mission to achieve. And if our mission is not achieved, then we are a failure in our minds. And that's why any little chance thing, any bad luck, the moods and whims of others become extremely important to us. And they become a source of anxiety, naturally, because they can stand in the way of us fulfilling our missions. They can stand in the way of us becoming someone, making something of ourselves. But look at every single philosophy, every single religion that has ever, honestly, and with dedication, tried to find out the meaning of all this. But tried to find truth, honestly, and without ulterior motives. All end up saying the same thing. All the ancient Greek philosophers tell us and told themselves, know thyself. In another time, in another place, the Bhagavad Gita says, know that by the knowing of which all things are known. Know that by the knowing of which all things are known, which is thyself. And of course, countless examples in Christianity, in Islam, in the Bible, and the Quran. Everything. This is why this is said. Everything in the outside world is an image of reality. Every single tree you see is an instance, an image of the idea of a tree. Every single dog you see is an instance, an image of dog as a concept. If every single dog would die,
No, sí,
and
hace
someday
mucho.
will, right? The idea of it will still be there. And if given the right conditions, somewhere in the universe, that same exact concept might find an image again, might become an instance again, might exist again somewhere actively again. Of course, passively, it always exists.
Sí, en la compu.
The idea is always there, even if there's not a single dog in the universe. We, in our minds, know there have been dogs. That idea is real. And that idea doesn't die with the last dog or the last tree or the last human. Because if it did, we couldn't remember it. Anything that has once existed in tangible form as an image, an example of it, and that there's no example of any longer. But we were there when there was. We know in our minds it still exists. The idea, the concept, the blueprint for it will never, ever die. And so we give that up to come to the outside world and to try to do our work there, to become active there, to tie ourselves, to become slaves to images and to luck and to chance, to random fate. And we try to achieve that ideological, that conceptual, that very, we could say, divine goal that we have within ourselves. Who am I? What am I? What is all this? What is my place in it? And we try to answer that question, which arises in us, and we go and try to answer it outside of us, and is never, ever going to work. And coincidentally, all the people who ever did truly change something in the world for the better, all those people who did, so to speak, make something of themselves and are still remembered and will always be remembered and stand for something, those are the people who answered that question within themselves, who found meaning within themselves, not in any activity, in any mission, in any accomplishment, in any so-called success, in any ambition outside of themselves. not in anything in the outside world. They've never done anything outwardly for its sake. It all comes from what they know and what they've figured out and what they believe in on the inside. It's only an image of what they achieved, truly achieved, within themselves. And they literally gave up their life in this outside world to live according to the life that they had within them. We read of Socrates, who had to drink poison because he was convicted because of some trumped up charges. His charges were that because of his questioning, what we now call Socratic questioning, him going around and asking people, what do you believe and why do you believe it? And him asking them for so long that they really didn't know why they believed what they believed. He was accused of corrupting the children or corrupting the youth and introducing new gods, because his new god, so to speak, was, reason. And he was so-called corrupting the youth because he was confusing them. He was breaking societal norms that don't really make any sense. Once questioned, they don't hold up to rationality. And he was simply exposing that. In fact, there are many times in Plato's dialogues where he calls himself a midwife. He says, I know nothing. I'm just a midwife. I bring out the good ideas within you. But anyway, he went to trial, and a jury of his peers, hundreds of people, by a small margin, found him to be guilty of that. And he drank the poison, which he was sentenced to do, even though he could have escaped. And one might say, what's the point of dying like that? What's the point of respecting trumped up charges and laws that are objectively backwards and wrong? And just from reading the dialogues, just from reading how he thought, you can tell why. He himself was involved in government, so to speak. He himself was someone who made laws and enforced laws. And he believed in justice, and he believed in a society in which people respect the laws. And so he didn't want to be the one who breaks that. Not because anyone else would perceive him to be a hypocrite, but because he believed that within himself. And if you really want to satisfy that part of yourself who still thinks that way, who still thinks, well, that was a pointless death, what's the point of that? I'll tell you there was a point, even in that way. By his death, he revealed things, and by his life, and by sticking to what he said throughout his life, his death confirmed his belief to everyone else that he believed in his life. It was proof that he truly did think that way. It was proof that he truly believed these things. And it added a weight to his words and to his thoughts that still exists today. I do believe that the only reason that we still know of Socrates and that we hold those ideas in such high regard is because of this proof. And he revealed things to us that once revealed, we will never be able to forget again. Similarly with Jesus, it's a very, very similar figure in that way. Jesus didn't want to die on the cross. He didn't think when he was a child or a young adult that that would be his ambition, that that's how he would make a name for himself, that that would be his ambition and his achievement and his goal. No. He found his meaning, his ambition, his purpose in the highest, truest sense within himself, and then just like Socrates, went on uncompromisingly to live according to those ideas which he thought was higher than anything else, than any of these images, copies of things of the outside world. And it's because of the things he revealed that he ended up on the cross. Because it angered the people who didn't understand truly what he was revealing. He said before he died, I will speak in parables and I will reveal what has been hidden since the foundation of the world. And that's exactly what he did. He revealed why people are angry. He revealed why they hate. He revealed that the kingdom of heaven, God's kingdom, is here on earth and not only in some afterlife. He said we are in hell, can be in hell now, and we can be in heaven now. It's about what we do with this life and how to enter that heaven in this life. That's what he revealed. But many people didn't want to hear about it because it meant that they would have to give up their outward ambitions, their outward works, that they would have to stop loving copies and images and false things and false idols, such as money, their greed, their wealth, their successes, all these things they would have to give up to truly enter heaven, to find all the answers within them. Because we can either live inside or outside. We cannot do both. Not at the same time, anyway. We have to make a choice. And it goes both. Not at the same time, anyway. We have to make a choice within them, but to truly enter heaven, to find all the answers within them. Because we can either live inside or outside. We cannot do both. Not at the same time, anyway. We have to make a choice. And it goes counter to everything we've ever been told. And that's why it's so hard, so difficult it feels to let go of these things. There's another friend who can immediately show us that. And I've talked about him a few times before. Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's all in here. He was a Jew during World War II who did actually have to go to a concentration camp. He lost his pregnant wife. He lost his career. He was a psychologist and I think a professor at schools. He was literally stripped of every single thing he thought he was and ever could be. And the only reason he made it out of the Holocaust and had a flourishing career and inward world and happiness afterwards is because he understood that everything outside of us are copies and images and not the real thing. And that everything